maintain myself. Always hostile and pessimistic for having to play the cards I'm dealt. More determined than fatalistic, a savage fate that can't be helped. Your shallow perception's not a problem, you'd have to make the hardest sell. Deploy a caution as an option, cast aside all archetypes. The architect's my target next. I cannot stand a standard life, go smash some sets, command respect, get ready for a marked effect. These average men can laugh, condemn, but I've had battles that transcend what they've had a chance to comprehend. That, my friend, is actual strength. Stretch that will to grandest length. Simple method, tried and tested, drilled that skill to massive depth. Challenge set, no regrets, how the going gets, that stoic sense. Filtered through a dichroic lens, I pretend to take control again. Find where the line is, I redefine it. We're a different kind, bring life to lifeless. Push to find it, improve your mindset. Choose a life that is truly timeless and boundless.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast here on the E2KG network. This is episode 189 for the week of April 22nd. But you know what? This is the Enough to Keep Going podcast where every other week we come at you with our GX show, our game experience show, where we talk about what we're playing. And in those off weeks and those every other weeks, we come with a deep dive of the game's industry news, business analysis, and quick hits around the industry. But this week is the fun week where we just kind of get a chance to sit back and talk about what we're playing. Some good, maybe even some bad. Always a lot to talk about. And joining me tonight to talk about this is Swiss Guard. How are you, Swiss?
Doing very well. I haven't played as much as I wanted to the last couple of weeks, but the games I have played, I've enjoyed. So
I think I can usually say that I haven't played as much as I wanted to, but that is more about my life and job than anything else. So, and also joining me running the boards tonight is Game Logic, Game IQ. How are you, sir?
I can also say that I haven't played as much as I would have liked to, but I don't know that I can ever say that I enjoyed everything that I played.
I think that's part of what makes this show enjoyable is that we come at things with a critical eye, or at least a grumpy old man, shake our fist in the sky eye. And so we've got plenty to talk about. First, we're going to start off with our new releases, and I'm going to start with my grumpy old man, fist in the sky aspect here for my new release. First, I thought I was going to start off singing John Fogerty Center Field, right? As get the baseball going. But I've been playing MLB the Show on the Xbox One X and not playing on new platforms, but still playing on last gen. So my load times are suffering, but hearing and reading online that the graphic upgrades are not significant, but really it is the loading speeds. But it's also the first time that Major League Baseball, Simulation Baseball, has been back on an Xbox console since 2013, since 2K, MLB 13, I believe. And it is, if you haven't been playing it for the last 5 years or the last 10, 12 years of MLB the Show, it's a blessing. It is wonderful to have it on both consoles and to have it day and date on both consoles and to have it crossplay and cross progression, that you can link your account and jump back and forth between multiple systems. And that is in and of itself a blessing. The game itself continues to be solid, rock solid in terms of gameplay. There are some new features. There's some pinpoint pitching, which has you do some right stick movement, drawing some motions in order to determine the pitch you're going to make. Haven't played with that yet, but I've spent most of my time in Road to the Show and in Diamond Dynasty. They've updated franchise a little bit. Franchise hasn't gotten a whole lot of love, but they have updated some trade logic there. So the trades, they factor in a few more factors to try to make the trades a little more logical, both in terms of age of player, scope on team, contract, potential, a number of different pieces. And they've also simplified some of the budgeting aspect, which has given me a reason to kind of come into franchise, because in the past when I've tried it, there's a lot of budget management in baseball, and in part because I I can deal with a budget management in Madden because there's a salary cap. And in baseball, every team has got a little bit of a different, you've got a different salary for each team. And so it complicates things a little bit depending on who you're going and how you're maneuvering. Road to the Show right now it starts off a little bit different. You can start off as a two-way player. Actually, it forces you to start off as a two-way player and then asks if you want to change that, to come in and modify that, but it starts you that way. The biggest change in Road to the Show seems to be there are archetype progressions where for the last 3 years, since 2018, you would kind of choose an archetype and that would give you some baseline stats. Here you have archetypes that can be swapped out. You can build different kind of loadouts. So you can have one primary boost and then two secondary boosts. And that works well kind of on paper in terms of if, especially if you're playing a two-way person, that if you're going to be playing in the, if you're going to be playing the field, you're going to want to change that laid out loadout to hitting and fielding. And if you're going to be on the mound, you want to change that loadout to pitching centric ones. The difficulty that I'm finding in it, and again, I'm only a month or two in on my character, is if you're playing with a team that has your pitcher also batting, it makes the loadouts a little more difficult because you kind of handicap yourself. You're not able to do as much on the mound as you are if you would have all three of your loadout spots for pitching, and you're not able to focus enough in batting to be significant there either, which I guess is probably realistic because pitchers are they're usually your weakest hitters on your team, and so that is functional. Right now, there are some glitches in terms of the Road to the Show progression, that those loadout progressions are not working the way that they should. They're not accruing progression. You're still getting stat upgrades, like as you do things, as you strike players out, you're going to get your strike up. But again, it starts, you start in the minors, you start in the double A's. Maybe triple, yeah. But depending on where you start, you're still probably right now. You start at a 59 or a low 60s, depending on where you're at, and the progression is slow, and it feels even a little slower than 2000. Than last year, than 2020, and but it also maybe it is designed that way as well. They've come out and said that either you'll be in the minors for longer this year in this version. One of the things that has gotten some pushback has been the Diamond Dynasty integration of your Road to the Show player, where you can bring your Road to the Show player into your Diamond Dynasty, which is like your fantasy league where you pull cards and have a variety of players. And that there's progression there. So you can't upgrade your players' stats there, but you can upgrade their loadout. So as I played with my character in Diamond Dynasty, I unlocked a couple more loadout tiers playing there, which I wasn't doing in 2 months of playing in Road to the Show. So there's some progression things that Sony Santa Monica has already, or San Diego has already announced that they're working on.
So one of the things you mentioned, DB, was that skill progression or the loadout thing is. You said that do you have to switch that in game?
So before you start a game, like in your calendar, and it's you're heading to the next game, it'll give you a pop-up menu for your loadout, and so you have you create one, and you could create multiple ones. And I've created 2 different loadouts at this point for my pitcher, mainly as I'm no longer a two-way player, and I've made it through that part and just a sole pitcher, but I've made a kind of a control-based pitcher and a velocity-based pitcher, and so I can kind of swap those just to try to play around and see how that works.
Okay, so it is. So it's complementary. It sounded like when you were first describing it that in between innings or whatever, like when you went to bat, you had to switch, and then when you went on the mound, you had to switch. But it's
No, you're basically heading into the game that way.
okay. All right.
I mean, think of it as like the equivalent of your loadout before you hop into a multiplayer match of a first-person shootout type of thing. I think the idea behind that is interesting. I think the challenge of that, and this is the challenge of that, is that if you're really a two-way player, if you're good at something, you're probably still going to be good at it. Like, you're not going to be bad at batting when you go to pitch because you swapped your loadouts, right? There's like, there could be some type of, I'm almost thinking like I'm almost thinking like a Final Fantasy job system type of thing, or a Bravely Default type of thing, Swiss, where, once you level something up, it boosts some base stats that stay with you even if you change classes, where this is not the case. Like, you change those classes, and that, that structure changes with you. Granted, I mean, those are on top of your base stats. So you still level up in the normal way of doing. But again, that progression seems to be, it feels slower than last year. And maybe, I haven't dug enough online to see if people have done the comparisons, but my 63 pitcher who has decent velocity started at a 31, and after, probably 4 games of double digit strikeouts, is still at a 31 and maybe halfway up the progression bar. So
So one question I want to ask is, and we all know I love a progression system, but one of the things we're going to talk about tonight when we talk through some of these other games is how there's a horizon on that, right? There's an apogee on that curve that it hits, and then you're like, why do I need to manage and juggle like 15 different progression systems? And we're going to talk about some games with season passes that started with 3 progression systems and now are like at 89 progression systems. So this to me sounds like I'm glad to hear it's a little more convenient than I was thinking of it, but still, it's a thing where, again, we'll talk about another sports game that has lots of, levers, dials, and wheels and switches for you to flip. But at a certain point, I'm like, I just want to pitch. Like, I don't want to have to like hit the swing stick in the center of the like thing, and like, so it just makes it more complicated, particularly when you're just looking for. We talked last week about, or 2 weeks ago, how some of these season pass games are. We're just looking for the game of 5-on-5 basketball, right? That we want to go play on Wednesday night. Like, we don't want to have to. We're not trying to manage, 5 different pairs of like high top tennis shoes and 2 different knee braces and yada yada yada, right? So, particularly in the progression from last year, I mean, is it more stuff in your windshield that you have to manage, or does it actually make the game more fun?
For Road to the Show, it feels like there's more stuff in my windshield because of both the loadouts and the progression. Last year you had the progression. You also had kind of the relationship piece where you could have, you go into practice with somebody and build your relationship with a teammate, or, you'd have a conversation with them, and they were pretty canned and they weren't great, but it did give you some boosts. That system is in here somewhere still. I haven't seen it yet. Again, I think by slowing down the progression curve, you're not seeing some of those things as quickly, but also it feels a lot more grindy because of that as well. Like, you're not kind of powering your way through the minors to get to the major leagues, and it's kind of making you pay your dues down in the minors a little bit more. I think I haven't played it enough yet, but I am tempted to go back and play. I mean, I picked up MLB The Show 20 on PlayStation like a month ago when it was like $5, because it was $5, and I played a little bit again, and so I have that comparison relatively recent, and it's a smoother piece there. You feel like you're seeing the growth. You're moving up numbers more than just fractions of numbers after a game.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
That's listening to both of you, like and hearing you describe the game. I think it does feel very modern, and I would say that Grindy sounds like those were the two words I was going to jump in before you guys both stole my thunder. Um, but it feels like I don't play a lot of these games where it's like, you know, you have season passes and everything like that. And just because I hate that, like, it's very intimidating for me as a gamer to look at that and be like, how much time do I have to invest to really feel like I'm accomplishing something? Or am I just going to be kind of dithering around in like the newbie zone and that's about it? And usually I'll just decide it's not worth my time. Because like to me, like again, MLB the Show, it's just like, I just want to play baseball, and it, you know.
So let's put Road to the Show to the side, because Road to the Show is one mode in MLB the Show, and the rest, great. I mean, if you want to play baseball, there's some really good baseball to be played. This year, I've spent a little more time batting and learning the mechanics than I have in the past. You know, I think some of that is very much me. I realized this over the last couple of days of playing, is like I'm bringing in my anxiety of standing at the plate when I was in high school and worrying about the pitch, and not thinking of it as a video game. But if you want to play baseball, there is some really good baseball, right? Like there is, you pick up and play modes are great. The franchise is still, it's not as deep as other franchises, but if you want to play a baseball franchise that isn't completely spreadsheets, this is your only option. I mean, Out of the Park baseball is great and really deep, but it's a different type of game. And the March to October aspects where you're picking a team and kind of jumping in to head to specific, you know, key moments and key games, still really sound baseball. You know, the you don't have to do the pinpoint pitching. All the input models for both batting and pitching that have been in the past are still here. So there's, you know, it's still just fun to play. I mean, I still find myself, you know, playing for hours on end the last couple of nights because it's enjoyable. I've sunk more time into Diamond Dynasty this year than I have for the first week in, you know, in quite a while, since it's just enjoyable baseball. And Diamond Dynasty is, again, not nearly as grindy as it could be, thinking of other kind of My Team, Ultimate Team types of things. And it does something, thinking of progression and battle passes and season passes. It doesn't have a season pass, but it has that same mechanic where you have daily and weekly kind of objectives, you know, play X number of innings, pitch X number of strikes, hit X number of times, and you'll earn XP through that and stubs, which are kind of the in-game currency. So if the RPG stuff maybe isn't as polished or as functional as it was in a couple years, there's still a really good baseball game here. So, Gascles, have you given it a try yet, or is it on your radar? I know you've picked up the show a couple times in the past.
It is not. So, and I know that, you know, there are lots of like indie track gamers and everything who don't like my reviews based approach, but just in terms of managing time, like I just don't go after game. I mean, for games that are in like my primary window, I'm just an 80 or above kind of player, and you know the word on the street is that this year's MLB is a little bit below the threshold of what it's been in the past, and so it's just not hitting my threshold for, you know, where I want to spend time with it. Have you played? So you haven't played 20?
Yeah, I've played 20. Yep.
Okay, all right. So how's the fielding? Because I felt like, number one, they did, I can't remember what it is now, but they did something with fielding that made it a little more complicated last year. But in particular, it was super highly glitchy, especially at launch. It took them weeks to get that thing patched. I mean, I have live streams where you could clearly see like the ball land inside the park, but then on the replay, then then it got scored as a home run. So, any improvements in that?
I think so. I mean, I haven't had any glitches in gameplay. There's been a couple times where the server has been down, so you can't get into certain things because everything's connected. I mean, you could play just an offline game, but the fielding feels good. In some ways, they've added an icon or like an arrow icon that shows the direction of it shows the best path to the ball. It doesn't draw a complete line, but it gives you kind of a 10-step outline of where you should be moving in order to get to the ball. And you can, change the ball icon so that you can have the kind of default spinning ball as it's up in the air, or a couple other ones that will give you kind of the space where it's going to be and still force you to kind of follow the shadow. The throwing feels, in the past I've only used button throwing. This year I'm using analog throwing, where you're kind of loading and throwing. I still am not a big fan of the Showtime one, where you have to, like, what is that? You have to move the target within a certain spot and then hit the button at the same time in order to get a perfect throw.
Oh well, yeah, no, I've never used that. I just know last year the preloading the throw was just, the calibration on it was just out of this world. Like you held that button for a microsecond too long and the ball was just going over to the complete other side of the field. So
right now it feels pretty good. The one thing I am noticing, depending on your playing a couple different, playing a my character and also playing just some regular baseball players, it makes a difference what your fielding stat is, because you can load the throw perfectly, but if your feet aren't planted and you have bad fielding or bad throwing, you're going to throw wide or throw high. But if you're a second baseman with a good rating, you can throw on the run without a problem. So that's felt pretty precise.
the other thing that was a struggle last year was that I really hated was, and I didn't go back and play enough more of 20 after several patches, was the auto switching of the fielder, right, when the ball was in the air. It's like, because the previous season, like, it wouldn't auto switch. Like, if the fielder was under AI control and was running to the ball, it wouldn't I think the change they made in 20 is it auto switched a lot faster. And so on too many occasions you'd be holding the stick in the completely wrong direction, because it would like auto switch between like your center fielder and your left fielder, and then, right, because of the difference in relative direction, the guy would then start moving in the opposite direction from the ball. So did they tighten that up this year, or
that I'm not sure. I haven't had too many fly balls that way where I'm chasing down both, having a center fielder and left fielder both go after it type of thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. All right. Well, another game that I've played a little bit of, but not nearly as much. But Swiss, you've maybe played a little bit more. So this is Pac Man 99. So I played a couple matches, found it kind of fun. Still kind of figuring out what everything on the screen means.
Yeah, that's
How are you doing?
That's pretty much where I'm at. Pac Man 99 is another one of these Nintendo Online, taking a classic game and making it a battle royale type efforts. Obviously, it gets the Pac Man treatment this time. And I guess I was never a big Pac Man gamer back in the day, because like the first match I played, and I'm hitting about the same level of success every match, and it's probably due to
What level
like
is that? Where are you at?
I get to the 40s.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yep.
But it's probably due to like not having the Pac-Man skills, because like I dominated in Mario 35. Like I could win those, but it's fun. Like these are always like, it's like, oh yeah, it's a game that I like, and there's a little bit more of a competition aspect to them. So it's Pac-Man. It's cool that I guess you can, like, seems like you're throwing ghosts. I'm like you. I'm having trouble mapping what's happening to the other players while I'm playing. And with like Super Mario 35, it's a little bit more direct. Like, like I kill this enemy and it's popping on somebody's screen, and just I could grok the, like, what I was supposed to do a little bit better. This one I'm just like kind of trying to survive Pac-Man. And
yeah, I don't know how much of ghosts it's throwing, but you get a lot of the Pac-Man shadows where it'll slow you down.
Okay.
And those I think are part of what people are throwing onto your board.
Because I know that like when you eat the ghost, it looks like it's shooting off a little bit. so I'm not really sure what happens after that. But yeah, it was like I wouldn't say like I'm gonna go back and try and keep playing it, but for a free game that you can download on the Switch for like a little bit of classic reminiscing, it was good. Not my
Yeah,
favorite of the battle royales though.
no, I mean, I think in some ways it's not as clean as like Tetris 99, where like garbage blocks. That's what
Mhm.
happens. That piece. But I think I, it's an interesting spin on it. I wonder how if it'll be refined or tightened up as they go, because it does seem like there is a full paid mode to it somewhere in there that unlocks more boards. I'm not sure what it unlocks. Um, but it for me, it does the same thing that a Pac Man console would do if I was walking past it in an arcade or at a restaurant in the late '80s, early mid '80s. I'd put a quarter or two in and play a couple boards, but it's not a quarter muncher type of thing for me. So let's go from one old game to another one, not quite as old, but so how does Fez end up in the new releases here, Switch?
It, it's a new release on the Switch, right? Like
Fair enough,
so
fair
the
enough.
Switch
Yes,
release.
as I
We
break
can
out
move
my
it.
PlayStation Vita to play it. So tell me how.
You can
So
move it down the agenda if you'd
no, no,
like.
no. I mean, it is a new release on the Switch, but how did you end up picking it up? Because I don't know that. I mean, you've had access to it on multiple PlayStation consoles before. Why
Yes.
now?
I didn't pick it up. That's the answer. So my son watched the Nintendo Indie Direct the other day, and this was one of the games he wanted. So it's like, dude, you have the allowance to fork over? He's like, do I? So um, I took his,
Nice job, Dad.
yeah, I took his cash and I'm going to use it for a haircut in a couple of days and went in and logged into the eShop and bought a copy. So, but while I bought it, I was like, when I did watch the Nintendo Indie Direct, I thought it was interesting, even though it hasn't really appeared on my radar in the decade or whatever it's been out. So I gave it a spin, and I played through like the tutorial and a little bit, a level or so, a couple of levels, and I like it. I'm gonna continue playing it. So
How's your son like it? Because some of it I remember at the time, right? There's an internal language to the game in terms of some of the puzzles and things like that. How's your son doing with it?
neither of us have probably gotten far enough with that to have to fight those internal puzzles yet. Um, and he's still kind of at the age where it's like any game is cool. Like you always see everything with rose-colored glasses, and so he's not a very good. He's not a reliable source for.
Fair enough, right? Yep.
uh,
That game I rented is good because I paid money for it.
yeah,
Yes.
it was awesome. It had the guy I like from the cartoon I watch. Uh,
Hey, he's at least as mature as 99% of the internet. So his sounds like his opinions on games are right in line with the majority.
Yeah, I try to funnel him down certain paths and ask him pertinent questions to get him thinking critically about video games. But as far as Fez is concerned, like I do like the mechanic. That was what attracted me to it. The whole 2D shifting. It's like a 3D world kind of, but it's like 2D shifting. Um, once you actually start getting in there and like your brain knows like the relative placements, but then the platforming is like 2D, and so it's clever. I thought it was interesting. The little bit that I've seen, like I like the very subtle sense of humor that they have with the characters. It's not a Mario. Now the name escapes me, even though I played it the other night.
3D World, Cat
Uh,
Mario.
no, the Paper Mario Thousand Year
Hmm.
Door, not Thousand Year Door.
Yeah.
Whatever
Sticker,
the new one is.
the most recent one. Yes.
Yeah, Paper Mario. It's not Paper Mario level humor.
Origami King. There we go.
That's it. Um, but it's there, and like I opened a treasure chest and it played like a little tune, and I was like, wow, that sounded Zelda-ish, and then like immediate and like one of the things, you know, the little whatever it is that's your guide says, "Hey, listen." And I was like, "Oh dang, they are like Zelda fanboys and putting it in there." But but yeah, just I when I was playing it, it was like, okay, this is definitely a game I can sit and chill with. And I wanted to play it more last night, but some kid had dropped the Switch behind our couch, so there was a huge level of aggregation for like an hour while I was searching for it, and so I didn't get to play it much. But this feels to me like an Octopath Traveler thing where I can like chill for like 20 minutes like in bed before I go to sleep or something type type game. So
Nice. Yeah, I was just doing a little digging here to see what else Phil Fish has done afterward. So he got lots of press when Fez came out. So excellent. So from one kind of game announcement with the Nintendo Direct to another, this is our picks plays of the week, of the last 2 weeks, gentlemen, has been around E3 game highlights from E3 of yore. So our assignment here was to go back to some excitement from some previous E3s, because as we had the announcement that E3 this year will be back in an all digital like form with very probably closer to those directs than what we are used to within the physical E3s and big conference showcase presentations and press conferences. So we were asked to go back into some of our E3 highlights, games that got us excited, and to see if there's still something to that game. Go back to the game itself or something that's related to it, a sequel, something in that franchise or by the developer, and see if it recaptures some of the buzz or how it holds up with time. Game Logic, you picked up a game that has continued to be in my weekly rotation. No surprise to anybody, but is Destiny 2. So this was E3 2017, I think. Well, it wasn't even E3 because it was May of 2017 when they had Bungie did their own announcement here, and then you got more during the E3. So one, why'd you decide to go back to it? And also, looks like you're playing it on the PlayStation 5, which should mean you got some nice frame rates there.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of landed on this a little bit because later on we'll talk about me hitting up NBA 2K21 and spending some time in NHL 21, and quite honestly, I've just had a few things going on at work, so I was kind of listless and kind of soul searching for a few days, and didn't do any gaming during that time, and we talked a lot about Destiny 2 last podcast or last GX show, um, and how it kind of wasn't doing some of the things that lots of us needed it to do. But I haven't touched the Beyond Light campaign since it came out, and I had totally missed the fact that the next gen upgrades had occurred. So I went ahead and targeted Destiny 2 and wanted to play it on the PlayStation 5. Um, I mean, so first of all, like the good, first of all, playing it on the PlayStation 5 with that the DualSense controller is the closest thing to mouse and keyboard that I've ever experienced. Like the precision. I mean, you can see, like, if you watch 2 videos of my gameplay, you can definitely see when I'm on, a previous generation PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, and just again how I normally kind of have that penchant for not doing what Tao does, which is a good thing, which is go in and like individually calibrate per game how the controller behaves. Um, I tend to not do that, and so you can kind of see when I'm on a controller that I don't have that tight precision, and pulling a 360-degree turn or a quick snap turn is a wild kind of event. But like when you're on the dual sense, like you can, like, the precision is like almost mouse and keyboard. Like you can do very small, tiny incremental movements when snapping the aim, which is really great for Destiny 2 when you've got an assault rifle or a scout rifle or a pulse rifle armed. And so that feeling in and of itself on the PlayStation 5 is incredibly wonderful. I don't know. I'm suspecting that you didn't have FOV control in Destiny 2. Okay, on
Not
PlayStation.
out, no, not outside of PC. I mean, which is yep.
Okay. Until now, you do have it on the PlayStation 5, and I suspect you probably also have it on the Xbox One. That's one of the things that's generically talked about in most shooters that are on the next gen platforms that have gotten their optimizations and enhancements. And so I think the range goes from like 70 to I think 110. So I was playing and I'd been gaming for about an hour, and then finally I was like, that FOV seems like really tight, of course, because I'm accustomed to playing it on PC. And I said, I wonder if it's got the control, and it does. So that was helpful as well. As you mentioned, DBQ, I like the little stories in Destiny 2 in the expansion pack campaigns. They're not super flowery along the lines of The Last of Us Part 2 or Onimusha or Ghost of Tsushima or anything, but kind of in a generic weekly like a CW kind of show like level story. It's there, and that's kind of all I need as a superhero sci-fi guy. It re-imparts that feeling of kind of being a Green Lantern, right? Being part of this like galactic core who's responsible for going around the universe and maintaining order. So I enjoyed getting back into that as well. The bad, I alluded to it previously, right? And these things have been around for a while, but they're still a shtick that still kind of gets in my craw. It's like, I really I have to go and like claim my triumphs, right, for them to actually add to my progression. Like, can I just earn the triumph and you just give me the XP? And you have to remember, there's no on-screen cue to tell you to go do that.
Just the
Um,
glowing, yeah, when you're in a menu.
right, right. So I think this season is about to wrap up. I want to say like close to the middle or the like first 10 days of May. I think it's May 11th. There's some note on there that says something about shaders are going to be. Is it shaders are getting unlocked?
Yeah,
And
shaders are getting unlocked, so you no longer have to keep them. Basically, that once you have earned one of them, you can go back and buy as many of them as you want.
okay, so they're not going to charge you Glimmer for reacquiring.
I'm gonna guess so.
Okay,
Probably.
okay,
Yep.
which is
Because
fine.
yeah, they've told you to break down them for Glimmer, so
Okay,
I'm gonna guess that that's part of it.
okay. Well, we all know I love my shaders, so it's pleasant to kind of get back to that. So I mean, stasis, stasis. I've resisted saying this on Twitter because I feel like the devs just don't need any more guff. Stasis is a trash mechanic, whether you're playing single player or multiplayer. I despise stasis. Boss battles. Leaned on DBQ. Thank you very much. You mentioned on the GX show before that your experience had been that you needed to step away sometimes from the boss battles and some of the progression and go grind for a little bit and then come back. And that's exactly what I did. It was kind of funny. Like I was banging my head against this one boss battle, and then like kind of in the back of my head, like Ben Kenobi, I heard DBQ saying this on the show a couple weeks ago, and I said, I'm gonna clap out. I'm just gonna go grind for a little bit and come back. Like I'm at the light level that it says I need to be at, but like this is just not working. I should mention, and so on Europa, which 2/3 of the way through the campaign, I'm kind of already tired of that landscape. But it is very similar to Titan in terms of some of the platforming that it calls on you to do. I didn't help myself out by deciding to go back to it after a long layoff by choosing my warlock with all of that derpy warlock jumping. So many times I have died in playing this campaign just because I went up in the air and like I was in the air so long that the boss was just able to track me, right, and hit me midair, and there's nothing you can do, right? Once you have expended your directional glide or whatever, there's nothing you can do but float back down to the ground. So there was that. Um, but but other than that, I'm generically having fun with the campaign. These boss battles are probably some of the worst boss battles I think that I've ever experienced in in Destiny 2, just because of that stasis mechanic. Just drives you into tactical situations that are incredibly infuriating. Combine that with like the disappearing platform mechanic that comes up, on at least one of the bosses, maybe more. I'm okay when that appears, very infrequently, but like just the number of times that I had to reattempt that boss battle was entirely frustrating. That same boss battle, if you come back to that as like a patrol, it's super frustrating. There's something, I never remember these enemy names, but like after you defeat a very powerful captain, there's some other enemy, some other fallen enemy in a room off to the side, which isn't even in like this main big bay room that you fight this battle in. So you go over there, you take him out. He gives you a, I forget what they're called, but it's basically the equivalent of a mote. He gives you one of those balls that you have to stick in a socket. The socket is across a canyon, right? Like further down the map. Like there's no, I mean, that's the route if you've played that boss battle before, but that mechanism is not there when you're going through and playing the campaign mission. So this socket ball thing, I forget what they're called, and this other thing are not there. And there's platforming as you have what am I trying to say? You go through the building, you hit a point where you have to vault across this canyon, and then there's multiple platforms that are above you. And with a warlock, actually the worst part of it isn't making the jump, it's overshooting the jump. So you have to deal with that. If you miss the jump and you fall to your death, the mote ball thing just randomly regenerates somewhere on the map where you dropped it. In my case, thousands of feet below the platform level where it was impossible for me to get. So I had to backtrack to where I had defeated this guy. Unfortunately, he respawns and defeat him all over again. But I'm like, that's the kind of like, look, you vaulted Titan. I don't need you to bring the platforming back. Like that is the worst element of Destiny 2. And I think the final thing I'll mention, the Fallen, the Elixir now, like they are the chump enemy of like they are like a shade above rats in EverQuest. They get no respect, like, but I will say, and I will compliment the Bungie devs, like it's time to finally put respect on the Fallen's name, right? In this one, like they finally like they're back to like I haven't feared like seeing a Fallen captain since like the early ongoings of like the first Destiny, but they are back now to being like a respectable enemy. Still not Cabal, in the in the Hive, I think have not the Hive, the Vex have to be appropriately feared because of just all the enemies that even the generic troopers who just spawn out of nowhere and come at you, but also like the Minotaurs and everything that pop up, the Hydras. The Hydras personally be my favorite enemy, but they are a respected enemy. So the Fallen finally kind of get their due by coming back. Unfortunately, they have the negative of part of that coming back is them being armed with stasis, which I just thoroughly just hate, even in single player, because it too often leads to frustrating tactical events. Like when I was literally at the edge and like hit the jump button to jump off the platform, and then I got hit with stasis and just fell to my death. So I just had to go back and do all of that over, that I had done up to that point in the boss battle.
The stasis piece is once you get through those bosses in the first half of the Beyond Light campaign, you really don't see it nearly as much anymore. I mean, it's heavy in those few bosses where they can freeze you and you kind of have to mash to get out, and that can disrupt whatever flow you were having. But some of the interesting missions in Beyond Light happen after you take out the boss, because then you spend more time with the Exo Stranger, and get a little more Clovis Bray content. And so you're inside and doing some interesting, there is some platforming there, but it feels different than the ice aspects of the first half of Beyond Light. So, and then once, and I don't know that I think I'm pretty much through that campaign, and I haven't really done much with stasis. I see people in strikes using stasis because I think the Warlock stasis is not great. I think some of the other classes, their stasis is pretty good. But you're right. It wreaks havoc like crazy, and there's still not necessarily a good counter to some of it too.
Yeah, and I do like some of the Warlock. I mean, the one Warlock use of stasis that I do enjoy is the stasis grenade. that when you pop it, it throws up like a 20-something foot wall that just the enemies just have to go around. So and if they're caught in it, actually frees them as well. So that one aspect of it is helpful. And when I now, when I say it's a trash mechanic, I mean specifically when it's used on you. So I'm fine with it
Yeah.
when I can use it on someone else.
I was curious because like I didn't think that it was bad. Like I can see why in like multiplayer it would be because it's just so different than the other powers that you get. But as far as like in a single player or camp PvE scenario, like I like the ability to freeze the enemies for a moment and catch your breath or whatever you got to do. Freeze them and then run away. And for me, like being a warlock, even though there's a lot of warlock hate going on, I run away behind a column or something and throw down my healing circle, and I can get back into the fray. So
yeah, it's just that it. My one downside of it is just and maybe I'll get past it with when as DBQ says I get past these boss battles. It's just the high frequency to me of where like too many times like that thing has been thrown and has been the result of my demise in a boss battle that has caused me to have to go back and redo, in a respawn restricted zone that has caused me to have to go back and replay like 10 or 15 minutes of game
now,
time because
I mean, all of these experiences I've had, I played with Jet Force, Villa. So it's sometimes like those frustrations are probably. I'm wondering if they're magnified, because are you like? Do you feel like you're cutting against like the Destiny grain by not really playing with a fire team, even though I don't have a full fire team, but
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I suspect that and I'm not projecting for you, but I'm just saying like if I were playing with another person, and in those respawn restricted zones, like I died. Because I think even in a respawn restricted zone, you respawn if the other person's still alive, right? Or they can come over and get you or whatever.
Usually there's a little bit longer of a timer.
Right.
But yeah, there's a way you can hang on.
Yeah, so I suspect that I wouldn't find it as frustrating if like I got caught in stasis and died, but the other person was still alive, and so eventually I would be able to come back in. But yeah, it's specifically because I'm by myself and I get frozen. You just talked about like the throwing down your healing circle. Well, I get just as I'm about to hit my healing circle, like is the moment second right when I get frozen and prevented from throwing down my healing circle, and then like get killed. So yeah, I could definitely see that, and and Destiny's probably best played with friends. I get that. So
yeah, not that I think that we're at a high point in Destiny 2 right now, but
I think the battleground. I mean, the most recent season has been better than past seasons. I think you're right. I think there's some content shortage. Definitely, I think the battleground aspect. They did a brand new strike, which was kind of interesting. With different mechanics. It goes back to some of the ball mechanics that you were talking about, and that's been. But it is small in terms of those are minute changes and improvements. So I can see, it needs some help.
and I mean, and I don't. And I don't want to say that I totally disagree. Like I just guess I just want to shape up my criticisms a little bit. Like I'm fine with the current campaign. Like I said, I'm fine with the story. And Destiny 2 from a battle rhythm perspective does what I need it to do. Like I'm completely fine if you just give me like 3 to 5 like little adventures like every season, like with a little bit of story, a little bit of the voice track, in the background again to give me that feeling of, here's a serialized TV show on the CW and yeah, here's 5 episodes, right? And then I can grind in between that. And again, I'm not objective focused where like
do they still do adventures? I'm trying to remember, like if the newer stuff, it feels like adventures aren't really a thing. If like, I feel like the model has changed so much from early Destiny 2 to now, and that's how I enjoyed consuming it as well. And it just feels like now they want you to grind for the good loot and do raids and stuff, and I just it's like the opposite of what attracted me to it.
Well, you get. I mean, I don't know because I haven't gotten past Beyond Light, but we're now. This is the second season since Beyond Light, right? 12 and 13. And so wasn't there, I mean, isn't there like a little, again, not super long, but something shorter than Beyond Light? Isn't there a little something for like season 13? Like a little scripted? Yeah.
Yeah, you get a couple missions. You get a mission or two in the beginning, and then but if you have the season pass, you get more of that, right? Like if you're a free player, you get the kind of 2 intro missions in a season to kind of entice you. But then the actual story content is really kind of locked away. Um, in some ways, the strike from last week, the Nightfall strike from last week was kind of the end of the the Cabal storyline, and now it's in the general population for Nightfall, but you miss kind of the ending cutscene with Zavala and the female Cabal leader Kaido or whoever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did see that. Yeah, and so again, this is part of. I will say this is part of the Destiny 2 problem, right? Is that in a world where so much has been done. Let's say in the Call of Duty example, again, less complexity maybe a little bit in that because it's a big multiplayer shooter game, but it's not a MMO. Where so much emphasis has been taken by Activision to ensure that it does not split its player bases. Like the sharding of the Destiny 2 player base is, I can't even imagine what it is. Like, I mean, to be a Destiny 2 player to come in now after all this stuff has been vaulted, like, and it's why you get these articles that are written that just say, don't even worry about like the legacy content of Destiny 2. Just come in and pick up right where you're going and where we are now, which is it feels like a shortfall that you can't that experiencing that is some convoluted morass of like trying to figure out how to find where all those legacy missions are locked away. And again, I still had and I bought the season pass. I still had the problem where, okay, what exact version do I need to buy? Like, since I have like this, and this, like, I mean, Forsaken and what is the other thing? And Warmind, like you like there still aren't really great just one-stop shopping guides that just say, if you have this, buy this. If you have that, buy that. Like, it's always some convoluted, thing. So, and I'm definitely speaking, in terms of the story-based content and what I feel like is there. I'm definitely speaking from the perspective of I have the season pass, so I don't know what it's like not having it and like having those gaps right in the lore not being filled in.
Oh, let's stay on the idea of lore and let's go to the next E3 game. Swiss, you came back to Control. So Control, I remember you really enjoying it in 2019, enjoying the lore around it and the gameplay. This was a Remedy game that was announced at E3 2018. And what brought you back into it for this assignment?
I had been playing it and I didn't get around to playing Death Stranding, and I thought, aha, I will look at when it was in E3, and sure enough, it was announced at E3 2018. So I've been playing the DLC. So as far as like the actual gameplay, it's like you got the whole telekinetic thing going on, and really cool storytelling from Remedy. But the last session that I was playing the DLC, like I'm doing the Foundation DLC right now, and like you're kind of under the oldest house, and I've gotten like a new power where it's like they let you choose your power. That was kind of an interesting thing. So you're going through and like the whatever they call it, the board, right? I don't know if you played it enough, but like it's the mysterious
Yes. Yep.
thing that you as the director interact with, but they're like, choose which power you want. So like I got one where I can pull like platforms out of walls and kind of use it to so yay, platforming, but it doesn't suck because it's third person. Then I've also seen something where it's like you can pull up, and like if there's rubble on the ground, like you can pull up like spikes from the ground. So if like there's a hiss or whatever, it does it, which would be cool. But the other thing that I noticed, I'm like, I think I remember more hiss when I was actually playing like the core game, and maybe I'm just like, maybe that particular session was just like a weird session where I was in between. But I'm hoping that there's more combat coming. But the new powers, like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, I like
Are
the
you playing
spiky thing.
one of the DLCs? Is that
Yeah,
what you're playing?
the foundation.
The Foundation. Okay, that's what you said when you said the
Yeah.
Foundation. Okay.
So so that's fine. And as far as the E3 aspect, so E3 2018, there's a lot of games that I remember from that E3, and Control actually wasn't on my radar coming out of it. Before the show, I went back and I watched the announcement trailer that was a Sony announcement trailer, I guess. I don't know if Sony had given them money to be for it being tied to that. I don't think it was never like pitched as
No, it wasn't
exclusive,
exclusive.
but
I think it was probably because this was the first time that they were not exclusive to Xbox. I think Sony courted them in some ways for that.
okay. But the trailer made the game seem a little bit more horror story and Resident Evil kind of almost. I mean, you do see the telekinesis, but like they don't. I could see why 2018 Swiss Guard would be like, this isn't really in my wheelhouse. And the only reason I picked it up was because it came with the graphics card I happened to buy that year. So I'm glad that I got it though. Um, and because it's not like a straight up horror game. It has some creepy vibes and whatnot, but there were I was looking and it's like you had the big four kind of last games for the PS4 era from Sony that E3. You had them do Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima. They did Days Gone and Spider-Man. Those were all in that E3. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice was in that E3. I think I was kind of into that one. I do remember picking that up pretty shortly thereafter.
And that was announced on Xbox because it wasn't
Okay.
exclusive to PlayStation. I mean, it came out on both as well.
Yeah, but it was interesting. Like they're so different games, Ghost of Tsushima and Control. So it's hard to compare. But like basically, that E3 had my last two games of the year coming out of it, which is kind of neat, I guess.
Nice. Well, I'm going to go on to something that isn't really in my wheelhouse, although I keep thinking it should be, and that is Persona 5, but not Persona 5, Persona 5 Strikers. So this is a Musou game. This is Dynasty Warriors. This is Hyrule Warriors. Persona 5 Strikers is, I find myself enjoying it more than the last couple Musou games that I've tried in terms of Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors, things like that. And I think it is because it does something really interesting with its IP in terms of Persona 5, that the special attacks, rather than being like in Hyrule Warriors, the most recent one where there's giant screen filling, super attacks, you have you have your standard attack, you have a special attack, and then you have an attack that it stops time. I mean, it stops the action and turns it into a turn-based role-playing game, right? Like you can aim where you're going, you choose the attack, and you then execute that attack. And then you go back to running around and slashing all kinds of hordes. But even that little bit of breakup gives it a feel of a little more strategy than simply just running from point to point on a big Dynasty Warriors map and trying to take things out. So I found myself enjoying it more than I thought I would. I know that I would have enjoyed it more if I would have finished Persona 5. Like I got far enough into Persona 5 to understand the characters. And so this takes place in universe of Persona 5 after Persona 5 has happened. And so this is the first time that all the characters are back together. So the opening is kind of fun because you get them all kind of talking. They go back to some of the same locations in the Persona 5 game. They're talking about what they've been doing or catching up with each other and going on a road trip. And the kind of the fun relationship aspect that Persona usually does it's a nice nod to that. There's not the same type of relationship building that you get in Persona 4, 5, 3, that type of how you spend your days and building up relationship dynamics. There's not the depth there to it, but it seems to be deeper than a normal Muso game. So I think if for those people that have enjoyed those types of games or that enjoyed Persona 5, it's a nice kind of side story aspect to it. So played a little bit of that, but really what I've been playing is sports games between baseball and football, American football and basketball is really what I've played a lot of. And I'm going to quickly touch on Madden, and then I want to talk with you, Game Logic, in terms of NBA 2K. So Madden 21, I kind of was grumpy old man about it back in August when it launched and was really glitchy, and I was having total graphics problems, and uh, come back to it now that it's free on Game Pass or included within EA Play and Game Pass. And a friend and I who finished 7 seasons of Madden 20 started a new franchise with Madden 21, and kind of relearning that. There's some mechanics that are a little bit different. Some of the gameplay I find the gameplay better and worth checking out. There's not nearly as many cheese plays, and the runs are not as overpowered as they at least seem to be. At least they were for me in Madden 20. And so now we're in the playoffs of the first year, and it's I backed my way in to the playoffs. I was hoping that Tao would be here because I'm playing the Bears, so I could tell him that his Bears made the playoffs. But in true Bears fashion, I lost against the Packers in overtime in the first round of the playoffs. So, but he's not here for me to rub that into him or to I did not miss a field goal 3 times, so at least there was that. But I have been playing a lot more of NBA 2K21. And how did you pull into NBA 2K, Game Logic?
What came up on my rotation was just some sports game genre games, Demand Signal. So I was looking for most recent releases that again were kind of above that quality level that I was looking for, supposedly by general consensus. Got pulled into NBA 2K21. Did not stick with it, so I bounced off of this one.
You're not playing the next gen or the current gen. You're playing the previous gen version of it, right?
Right, as we were talking about by way of kind of introducing that this was coming up on my radar last GX show. I was pulling this from Game Pass because normally I would have gone ahead and bought it. But when I looked at reviews of the next gen version on the Xbox store, I just saw a litany of people saying that they were having problems and errors and bugs. And again, having gone through that recent experience with Pacer, and not being able to get a refund for a game that had a game-stopping bug in it, I was like, yeah, it's I'm going to be playing stuff on Game Pass as much as possible now until I prove that I know that it works. So I think where I am now with sports games, after kind of many years of the heyday of EA Sports that's in the game, I just my interaction with sports games has kind of gone down to a trickle. There's not Tiger Woods. There haven't been Tiger Woods golf games for so long, and we talked last time about how NCAA football went away. And 2K games have just never really fit well with what I was looking for. The only real 2K sports game that has really clicked well with me was like the original NFL 2K, because you could have multiple players playing co-op on that, and so I had buddies that I was in school with at the time, that the three of us would play the Minnesota Vikings or whatever, and would all be on offense, and one person would play tight end, the other person would play wide. Like just an incredible gaming experience at that
That
point.
would have been like Dante Culpepper, Randy Moss,
Yeah.
Chris Carter type of time.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, it was an amazing experience at the turn of the century, on the Dreamcast, right, for something that just hadn't been done in sports games before. And that's like the last one that really clicked kind of well with me. where I am today, I'm trying to come back around to sports games. There's, EA is back to making more of them. Some franchises are returning. We're seeing a turning of the guard with, MLB, the show. But also concurrently where I am, as I am with a lot of different game genres, like my tolerance is really low. Like for, now today, you talk about a grind. Um, it is hyper focused on slider tuning, and like very rarely is the case. I mean, thank goodness there's sliders, but there's certainly not the simplicity of you pick rookie, pro, all star, and you go right. And so between trying rookie and pro, I spent several hours trying to tune sliders, which seemingly didn't really have a huge effect on at least the offensive part of the game. So the swing must be, I usually tweak sliders at like 5 points at a time. And so the swing must be much wider than that to effectively get anything to change in the game. I also found, in doing that, I also found it particularly frustrating that for whatever reason, however you're supposed to set it up, we've had some of these problems with sports games before, but there's global settings, there's seasonal settings, and there's profile settings, and in no case was I able to get a state where I felt assurances that any set of my custom settings would automatically be pulled into like a season game. Even to the point where even when I was saving mid game, I would recover the game and still have to manually go in to check that like my customized settings and slider tunings had been pulled in. So it was just problematic. There was also just a turnoff from all the EA, from all the 2K, microtransaction-y kind of stuff where when you first pull 2K21 up, all of the game modes are all of this my whatever, and it doesn't simply say franchise season, right? It's all like my league, my whatever, my something. They're not intuitive, and so even to get started, you have to read the descriptions of each of those different modes until you find the thing that you're looking for. And even then, you don't really have assurances that that's the thing that you're looking for until you start it and get into it and go, oh, okay, yeah, this is franchise. I can play multiple seasons in this. I think the last thing that I will mention as a turnoff too is stats-wise. Again, as I'm tuning sliders, especially in the first part of a game, what I need to know if it's being tuned in right and I'm seeing the results that I am trying to get and think I should be getting is it's very important to me that I see the team scores, right? Whether or not this is an 89% team or a 97 team or whatever, it's aggregate player roll up of score, skill, score, whatever. You don't get that in 2K21 once you're in a mode. The only time that I saw it was when I was selecting what team I was going to play for the franchise. And then once you're in the mode, you see power ranking, but power ranking is not the same thing. It's not the aggregate roll up of the player scores. And so maybe it's there, but it's buried somewhere in the UI. Just in general, I found the UI just way, way, way overcomplicated and not very helpful. So I spent several hours with it.
I could see that, right? I'm thinking about if you're looking to play an exhibition game, you got Play Now. But if you're looking to do a franchise, you got to go to My League. And then even in My League, you have multiple different options there because you have My Franchise or My League. And, and they do different things. And the only time I really think I see the player or the team score rating is in like an exhibition when you're choosing, when you're playing against somebody else or playing just a one-off game, and then you'll see that. But you're right. Like when you're in a season, you don't see that.
Right. Generally in sports games, when you go to the start game screen, it presents it, right? So you have an intuitive feel.
Like I choose my controller and I see that I'm a 82 Bears against an 87 Packers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, in the thing I meant to mention when I was talking about like how it's all the my league, my whatever, the microtransaction thing that was the super turn off was that the game initially presents you a UI dialogue that makes you feel like you can't play 90% of the modes without signing up for a 2K account, which is not the case. You can tab past that, and then you can still access like the franchise mode of multiple seasons. But the way it presents it, it definitely makes you feel like, oh crap, I can't. because it basically, because all these things are named my something, and it says in order to play my something, you have to have a 2K account. So you go, well, wait a second. If I don't sign up for a 2K account, am I not going to be able to play all these modes? And again, until you science experiment with it and determine that that's not the case, you don't know. Which, and I'm guarantee you, unfortunately for a lot of people, I'm absolutely certain that because they don't know, they just went ahead and signed up for an account that maybe they don't even actually need, depending on what kind of mode they were going to use to play the game. So, looks great. A lot of other things.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Yeah, it looks great. How have you found the new shooting mechanic, or at least the horizontal meter versus the previously kind of vertical meter?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not even the meter that and I guess maybe it's the horizontal meter. The meter that I had was the one that was like the arc.
Okay.
Right, and
Yeah,
then
I think
you have
that's
to hit it when the thing goes green. Thoroughly frustrating. Like,
that's what it has been. I couldn't, and maybe this is because I started my character on Stadia, but I couldn't go back, and I thought initially they had done the horizontal meter where you had to hit it, and then you also had to kind of aim it with the left stick, and they had backed away from that, and then they added back in the green meter. But yeah, it does. There's some timing pieces there, for sure.
yeah, and again, this goes into me tweaking the sliders, right? So it creates a thing where I'm assuming based on the player's skill score and who you're matched up and covered by, even if you hit that thing smack dab in the middle and it goes bright green, you can miss a shot. And I'm like, okay, like we need to simplify and dumb this down, quite frankly. Like if I hit the green sweet spot, first of all, that timing is so difficult to hit. Like, I don't care if I'm covered. Like I would hit that sweet green spot and and then after you miss, it tells you like the percentage of
Slightly
coverage.
covered, yeah.
I'd miss a shot and then see the coverage thing, and it's like I was covered by 11%. I was 89% open. I hit the maximum accuracy on the thing, and I still missed the shot. Like, what the heck is that? And again, after the first few hours of that, I was like, okay, yep, clapping out. I'm done.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time last year trying to learn the meter, and it's made the ramp into this game easier because I've got the muscle memory for it now. But yeah, it takes time, and it really is it is not only timing and coverage, but then it's also stat based. So if your person has a weak, outside shot or even mid shot, like the character I was playing, I could hit the timing and be open at like at the free throw line and miss the shot because he's got a 68 short range shot. Right. And so there's lots of layering of stats there.
Yeah, and so we talk about leveling and loot and just kind of like how much time you spend, learning curve with the game, progression systems, etc. So that type of thing just forces you to, you've got to invest enough time in that game to personally understand and know your team, right? And that just skews it away from a pick up and play type of game. And because I play some sports games, but I can't say today that they're 50% of my game base. Like, I'm not going to spend enough time in an NBA season to just become that familiar with the team to know that like this player is fine if they're covered by that player and they're on this position, and they're on this part of the floor of the court, or if that person's covering me, he shouldn't take the shot. He needs to swing it to someone. Like, I can barely track like the player names right on the screen. So
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I also can see where that. I wish there was a better way to message that so that if you did just want the kind of pick up and play piece, like you could jump into a franchise or a exhibition that had that ability, where because you're still left with that. I mean, I guess in some ways it's not drastically different than in another sports game, where you could hit a wide open guy for a quarterback, let's say with the Bears, hitting somebody wide open. But since I have Nick Folds, I completely underthrow it and throw an interception, right? I mean, like there's a stat piece in there. So you bounced off NBA, but did you find NHL a little more engaging?
Yeah, and this is something that probably I'm gonna need to dig at. Like, there's definitely an affinity where a franchise is on an engine that just is naturally kind of in my envelope that I need. NHL 21, you know, I think I don't know if I bought that. I may have just pulled it down on Game Pass. I think I may have bought that just because it has a history and a legacy of where it's been good for me. But pulled it down, you know, whichever way I got it. I only played like 1 or 2 games on it. Bam, like immediately fell within like my tuning of like my skill set and my play style for what I want. You know, got challenging games, you know, games where you know, there were losses, you know, but all the games were close and tight and exciting, and you know, had that feeling of momentum. So yeah, you know, absolutely what I was looking for, and certainly something that I'll stick with, you know, and continue playing. So yeah, right where it needed to be.
Nice. All right. So the one last thing I want to say about NBA 2K before I bounce off here is that I've played through my career for the last couple of seasons, and it is clear that this season was developed either a combination, right? It was developed during COVID, and it was developed as the tail end of a franchise of a generation moving to the next generation, because story pieces, story beats within the last couple of my careers where they've been cutscenes and you've had narrative pieces and you know, choices. Now you get a pop-up text message to say congratulations and stop by this spot here to pick up your VC. You know, it is bare bones in a way that, I mean, I understand because of COVID, but it makes it feel like it's less it's it's less of a robust game or less satisfying than the other, you know, than the previous years. And in some ways that mirrors where we started talking about things with MLB 20 and 21. Like, it's nice that it exists. I can understand that they were, you know, taxed in order to both COVID, but also trying to get it out on 4 platforms basically. And so I can see where things may not be completely functional or as robust, but it also makes me appreciate the previous year just as much. So we had some new games, we had some old games, we had some new old games like Pac Man 99. But our next Picks Plays assignment is diving into some of the new hotness. So last week we had the announcements of March's NPDs. Hardware continues to sell really well. Switch is selling. Still the best-selling console, but the PlayStation 5 has sold at rates faster than any other home console. Call of Duty is still back up on top, but Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch is right up there as well. So got a lot of new games coming, and we're, you know, kind of in that spring mode of new games. And so what we want to do for the next assignment is to go and jump on the bandwagon here, get into some of the hotness or something that's connected to something that has been selling or getting some press. Maybe it's a new update like you did, Swiss, with Control, with some of the DLC. Granted, that DLC is, you know, has been out for a little while, but maybe there's some DLC that's just dropping, or, you know, even something like the Borderlands Director's Cut that just came out for Borderlands 3, or dive into some of the new, you know, I think for Tao, it'll be pretty easy to jump into Cold War Black Ops. Looks like a game logic. You're not choosing the easy mark of Call of Duty, but you're going to look at Monster Hunter Rise. And I think I will go back to Outriders after playing it in the beta and kind of staying away during all the server issues from launch. I'll jump back in now and see what it looks like, what it feels like a month out. Swiss, any thoughts on where your bandwagon game will be here for this coming assignment?
Not sure yet. There's a lot of directions I could go with this. So
Well, you
I'll have to
know,
think
by the
about
time
it.
that this comes out, Pokemon Snap will be out. So if your kids pull you in the direction of taking Pokemon pictures, then that could count for this assignment as well. I don't know if they have enough allowance saved up for that, but you never know.
I'm pretty stingy, so I doubt it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, gentlemen, thank you for such a good show. Great discussion. I always appreciate a chance to get up on our soapbox, talk about, do some breakdowns, shake our stick into the clouds a little bit and complain. But Any other final thoughts before we step out for the evening? All right. So, in a week from now, we'll be back with another deep dive episode 190, coming up. Keep on moving here. So, we'll be diving into some of the news and industry analysis of the past 2 weeks. And I'm sure we will always find some things to talk about. So, for myself, DBQ Hams, Game Logic, Swissguard, this has been the Enough to Keep Going podcast here on the E2KG network. So until next time, play the games you love those you play with, and take care of each other. Good night.